Okay, we're recording, and I'll do the whole intro thing later.
Okay.
Because
I think Zoom changed the voice, the recording voice again.
Did they change the recording voice again?
I think so, because at first the voice was very aggressive, and then it went to super, super like, the recording is now in progress. Now I feel like it's a nice middle ground. I feel like it's like firm but comforting now. I don't know. Maybe they didn't change it.
I don't know. Who knows?
It's just the way I'm going to email Zoom and see if they'll tell me.
Yeah, I need an email notification whenever you're going to change the warning voice so that I know what to be prepared for.
We can talk about it on our podcast.
So we can talk about it on our podcast. This is the kind of dialogue doctor chat that everybody shows up for. Is conversations about the Zoom recording voice. Hey, so it's the new year. This is our first podcast of the new year. We're gonna drop this on January 2nd, by the way. Just isn't that crazy? Yeah.
It's not. And that's only like 4 days away.
It's only like 4 days away. Is it? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's 4 days away. I don't know. I'm in vacation time mode and waiting on COVID results. So I'm a little like, I don't know what day it is anymore. Yeah,
but you had to spend the day just watching TV.
I did. I spent the whole day anxiety binging TV. Highly recommend. With Laura, you hate my video recommendations for everybody listening, but highly recommend Only Murders in the Building. It's great. Steve Martin Short, Selena Gomez, surprisingly really good. Yeah, I was surprised. It takes like 3 episodes to get into.
You lost me.
It's as funny as Kimmy Schmidt. Oh, I'm just kidding. Oh, wow. I used that reference because I recommended that for her. Her husband hated it. Those when all my recommendations got.
To be fair, I gave Kimmy Schmidt 3.5 episodes.
Yeah. And you were hooked. You watched all the way through to the end.
Yeah, I watched all the way through to 10 minutes into the 4th episode.
I loved it. I watched it twice. Now people doubt my taste. Okay, so we're talking about 2 things. We're going to let the entire community into a debate we're just having, and we're going to talk about how we make New Year's plans. Which ones do you want to do first?
Dealer's choice.
No, you can't do that to me. I ask you first.
I kind of just did. So.
All right, let's go into the debate first. So.
Okay.
And then we'll end on New Year's plans because that way we can disagree and then agree.
I don't know that we're disagreeing. I just think that we have different perspectives on a vision for an opportunity for us to build a tool.
An opportunity, yes. So I'm just gonna trace the history of the argument so that people understand.
It's not an argument.
I'm gonna trace the history of the brawl that we've been having, the drag out fight, so that people understand why I'm correct. Actually, no, I'm the one that's completely changed directions. So let's go through the discussion, and then we'll just put it to the community. So Lauren, back in like May, I think.
Yeah, it was right before our last conference, or our second to last conference. It was our summer conference.
Yeah, our summer
conference.
It
was like right around that time. We were talking about the new book, about how we need to put together a book about voices and body language, cadence, pacing, and
modulations. And we said like, man, it would be fun to create like a character encyclopedia that like, hey, here's a description of the character, and then here's what that character sounds like. Right. And that was the idea. And I actually went down on a big rabbit trail that I don't even know that you know about.
Probably not. Because I put it on a lot of rabbit trails without letting me in on them.
I put it in the bonus episodes, but you don't get those. So that's where I talk about things that I don't share with you. I'm just kidding. We just haven't had time to talk about it. It's been a busy fall. So I went down. I started listening. This is my weird. I'm just going to bring everybody into my weird brain. I watched Tick, Tick, Boom on Netflix You just got to follow this trail with me. I watched
Mhm.
Tick Tick Boom on Netflix. I got obsessed with Jonathan Larson. I started reading all about Jonathan Larson. That sent me down a rabbit hole of Stephen Sondheim. This was before he died. And I started reading all about Stephen Sondheim. And I started systematically listening to all 40 of the weird musicals that he's written. Some are amazing, some are really weird. I got really obsessed specifically with a musical called In the Park, Sunday in the Park with George, which is a musical that he wrote about the pointillist artist George Seurat. And I got obsessed with it because he said it was his most autobiographical musical as an artist. So I started listening to it to understand his mindset as an artist. Then he died. And then I was like, well, it's fate that I'm doing this. So
Okay, so you do realize
wait, I'm
that,
only halfway through. So
yeah, and I'm already exhausted.
so then I started obsessing over it because I love the musical, which is all about like George Seurat like trying to create these things with these little dots, and everybody in his life like not understanding how long it takes and how painful it is, and like telling him to hurry up and all that stuff. Then I got obsessed with pointillism, and I started reading about pointillism, which is the form of art that was based on science at the time, which is really fascinating to me, that like this is what scientists were talking about, that when you put two different colors next to each other and you zoom away from those colors, they look like a third color. That's what scientists were talking about. So George Seurat used that to paint these paintings that were all single colored dots, knowing that when you looked at the painting from far away, the eye meshed those dots into a single color. So I was thinking about all of that in terms of the encyclopedia of characters we were going to write, because I was like, oh my gosh, each character kind of represents a color, and when we put these colors together, they make third colors. So you pair characters together and they start making all these characters. And
Okay, so now that I understand how this story came about, I'm totally winning this argument. It isn't, just to be clear to everyone, it's not an argument. But now that you've gone from this encyclopedia of characters that has personality and different dimensions of voice and how they can all mesh together and how they can work with their allies and their antagonists,
yeah,
to now we're
and I was like,
using
if you get a blue antagonist and a red protagonist and you put them together, they make like this purple story. And isn't that great? But if you take that blue antagonist and put it with this yellow protagonist, they make this green story.
This is very purple. This is very beautiful mind.
So I have so much yarn on like all different pictures. So then
do we think that we can get
I'm
Russell
not even
Crowe
done.
to play you in the movie?
No.
Right, that was Russell Crowe in Beautiful Mind?
That was Russell Crowe. No, the people in my head say no, he wouldn't do that. I don't have voices in my head. I do because I'm an Enneagram on the 6, so I have an inner committee, but that's a whole different conversation and is not a disorder. So where was I? Oh, pointillism. So then I was dreaming about that encyclopedia, and I actually started to kind of pin a little of it down, and I started looking at it and like thinking about like, okay, how would we group these characters into different things? And like, how could we like look at different movies and be like, oh, look at this is this pairing of this archetype and this archetype, or this descriptor and this descriptor, and look at how they go together, or this is this and this in this romance, and look how they go together. And then I came to a place where I was like, this is very limiting. And it feels like if you gave me that book as a writer, and again, this is me, not necessarily everybody. If you gave me that book as a writer, I would be like, my characters are unique snowflakes and none of them really fit the descriptors that you are putting on paper, and therefore your encyclopedia is garbage to me. And I would not use it. I would not. I'd be like, no, you don't. I'd take some ideas from it and I'd be like, go away. So,
and that's the thing, is you're a creative, you're a writer, and I'm a recreator. I'm a take this idea from this and take this idea from this and combine them together. So I think that's kind of where we're coming at this and asking our listeners to weigh in as a community of what's going to work better for you. Do you want this Lego system where you can be creative and build your colors with all the different pieces?
Which I haven't even described yet. I'm just kidding.
I mean, you kind of described it 4 different times in 4 different ways.
I'm throwing all of that away. I want to throw all of that away because I find the idea of like giving people these descriptors, these like fully formed characters, and saying like, oh, let's like pair these fully formed characters up. It like removes the individuality of a writer. And so we were at this big event with all these people. This is the next step in my evolution of thinking.
Okay, so this comes after Pointillism.
This comes after.
No, wait, sorry. This is after Pointillism, which led to dreaming, which led to
so Sondheim, Larson led to Sondheim, led to musicals. Sweeney Todd's not overrated. Led to Sunday in a Park with George. Led to Pointillism. Led to me walking around large events that we were at for the holidays and thinking about the people I'm talking to. And as I'm thinking about it, kind of analyzing their voices and trying to decide how I would put their personalities into a descriptor, like what bucket do I put this person in? And I was doing that, excited about our initial idea. So the initial idea is one thing on the table. And Laura is a strong proponent for good reasons on the initial idea. As I was walking around,
I love how dismissively you say that. Okay, and just for the listeners out there who haven't yet heard either idea, Jeff's idea is Lego based. My idea is action figure based.
Yes.
Right? Like if you're talking about toys, do you want to build something or do you want to take something that already has a personality and just make them create a story?
Yeah.
Right. Like that's kind of the difference in the way we're looking at this. But now that we've dismissed my idea completely.
No, okay, so let's give the idea some thought. So the idea is that we would give you a list of different action figures, and we'd be like, hey, this action figure is the strong, independent female with a chip on her shoulder. And we'd say like, here's how you would use the words, body language, cadence, and pacing for that action figure. Or this action figure is the shy, contemplative, introvert who has wonderful ideas. Here's how you would use words, body language, cadence, and pacing for that action figure. And we create kind of this like, list of action figures that you could just take and put into your world. So if you're like, okay, I'm writing a short story in this world I'm really excited about, and it's a love story, and I need, I have my female in mind, and she kind of matches this action figure a little bit. What, love interest pairs well with that action figure? And we create a tool that would allow you to pair these action figures. Right. Is that a fair description?
Yeah. Which sidekick would work? What kind of personality traits, and even maybe like what kind of storylines work well for that type of character?
For that type of action figure.
From like, do you already know what your character arc is, or do you already know what character personality do you want? Because if you can start with one of those, then you can find a voice and a ally and a sidekick and an antagonist, and maybe even to the point of hazard characters, right? So it's like, do you want to take your action figures who you already kind of know their behaviors, and do you want to put them in a new situation and play out your story? Or do you want to build your own character, which is kind of where your Legos come in?
Yeah. And it's so
like, go ahead, tell I won't tell your story. You tell your story.
So I was thinking about the action figures, and I was thinking about the buckets we'd put personalities in. And I was walking around these events I was at, and I was like, part of what I really love about humanity. That's right. I'm going philosophical with my son. Part of what I really love about humanity is that everybody's super different. And while we have these types, like we all have these personality types, we have these strengths, we have this stuff, you know, how that gets expressed in our real life character voice is radically different. So my idea was, what if instead of giving people action figures, we gave people the components of the action figures? Or, as I was saying earlier, Legos. And so, and we broke, instead of giving you the fully formed archetype, we gave you like components of a personality. So we're like, instead of being like, here's a shy, contemplative intellectual, we're like, here's, you know, the cadence a shy person uses. And here are the words an intellectual person uses. And this kind of body language is common for a somebody who's contemplative, and a contemplative person also uses this pacing, so that you could take this big list of attributes that are all just different Legos and build your own action figure out of it. And the fear there is that we would get some nonsensical action figures. We get like some, okay, my person is shy and enthusiastic and a coach who hates people. And it's like, okay, well, shy and enthusiastic is a really weird pairing. But part of me is like, no, let the creators build their own nonsense. Let's see what happens. So that's a different, but it's a different tool. It's a different tool.
It's a different tool, and this is why we brought that. So our original, for those of you listening out there, all two of you who are listening, all both of you,
we're very popular.
I know you are, but it's I'm here. So listenership.
It's not me that's popular. It's the other people that come on here. Anyway, sorry.
But anyway, so like we were talking about, you know, wrapping up the year, talking about the new year, what new tool do we want to put out next, right? And, you know, we're looking at this differently, and we want to know what you want, right? Like,
yes,
Jeff wants to build what Jeff wants to build. I want to build what I want to build, but we're not building for ourselves, right? Like, as an editor, like, I'm not writing anything. You give me some action figures and I'll play with action figures. But unless I have a guide to put Legos together, I'm not building with Legos, because I don't have a vision of what they can look like. Right?
And see, that's actually a good place where we differ, because when I get Legos, I immediately throw the instructions away.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm like, I'm just gonna, my kids will be like, Dad, that's supposed to be a spaceship. I'm like, no, it's definitely a castle. Right. No, it's a spaceship. But I'm like, look at the castle.
It's not just a castle. It's a castle on steroids that has a blue tower and a red tower. And if you stand far enough back from it, the whole castle looks purple.
Looks purple. Yeah.
And there are like singing people from different musicals dancing around in your castle.
So we're going to put this question to the Dialogue Dr. Slack community. Do you want a list of action figures that you can put into the world and suggested pairings for how those action figures work together? Or do you want character traits that you can then put together to build your own action figure? Which way do you want to go? And you can't say both. Don't say both.
No.
Pick a side.
I mean, you can if you really want both. But tell us which one you want first.
Jeff's going to roll his eyes at you if you say both. Like, both.
Just to be clear, like with the action figure model, it's not intended to be like you can only use Iron Man in his suit, right? Like you can customize the Iron Man suit to fit your needs. And the idea would be, we would give you elements of like, this works or this works for this character, but don't do this with it, because it'll end up looking like a castle with a spaceship base, right?
Yeah. And if for the Legos, if you have a deep love and understanding of humanity, then you then you know it right.
So basically what you're trying to say is, if you love people, you will choose the Lego realm. But you know what? I'm okay with that, because if your team, I want to watch people but not interact with them,
Oh, damn it. I just lost half the writers. Oh my God. Oh,
yeah.
crap.
See, you tried to use humanity against me again.
Oh,
And
I
I'm
fail
warning
every
you.
time. Oh, man.
No, I love the idea of the Legos, and I think that creative people are going to really lean toward the Lego side. But then I've also, we've worked with lots and lots of writers in this community after our classes, and people just calling us and saying, "Hey, I want to do a character session with you all just to kind of talk through my story." And they explain their characters to us, and we're able to suggest different words, body language, cadence, and pacing to them. And they have this like light bulb moment go off where they're like, yes, that's the character I've been trying to describe, which is why, from the action figure side of things, where it's like, okay, well, I already know who I want my character to be. So if I can just find how to write that voice. So but you've worked with different kind of writers than I have, and you're a writer. I'm just an editor.
Well,
So
and I think it's so for the question of the community, it's really about, it's going to take Laura and I 6 months to put this thing together. And you are going to have to listen to us. You have to listen to the podcast.
right
You're going to
now that
have
you've
to
listened
listen
to
to us.
we're implanting little
Yeah,
microchips into your ears.
that's
So
right.
Dialogue Doctor podcast comes directly into your
You
brain.
didn't know it, but the Dialogue Doctor is the deep state. You didn't know. You didn't know, but we
You're
are.
going to get us in trouble saying stuff like that. We're either going to have a whole lot of new listeners, or we're going to lose
That's right.
all of
a sudden, I just tweaked the Google algorithm in a really weird way. Deep State Podcast, Dialogue Doctor. So, wait. What I was going to say is,
okay.
Oh, wait, yeah. Well,
the important thing.
Did you just watch Inside Job?
No, we just watched Matrix Revolution. Matrix, the new Matrix.
I'm very interested, but I did not ask for that, so I do not know if I want to engage.
For an action movie, it was slower than I prefer.
Well, that's not a positive endorsement at all.
But to be fair, I did not watch the third Matrix movie because I was so mad at the second one that I didn't even bother with the third one. But you don't actually need to have seen them to get it. And there's some really
also
good
not an endorsement.
Well, I mean, I was really mad at the franchise for the second one. So, but no, it was decent.
Okay. Maybe
Yeah,
not.
it was
Maybe
decent.
not. I thought you were going to say you just watched the cartoon on Netflix called Inside Job that is actually about the deep state. It's the company that is the deep state. Yeah, it's a fun cartoon.
That definitely does not sound like something that my attention span will.
The minute I was saying it, I was like, Laura's not going to watch a cartoon.
Yeah, no, I watch a lot of shows. I love Netflix is my favorite streaming service now on the iPad because I can watch shows at 1.5 speed. Ooh. And that makes me very, very happy. I want my whole life really run in 1.5 speed.
Yeah, I just started listening to audiobooks at 1.5 speed. And that
it's great, right?
Man, I've been listening to The Power Broker, which is the 9,000 page biography of Robert Moses. And it was originally a 68-hour listen. And then I upped it to 1.5 speed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I might actually finish this thing. So yeah, it's really nice. And I'm not missing anything. It just, yeah. Okay, so the question to the reader is about where do you want Laura and I focusing on for the next 6 months? Do you want us describing character action figures and talking about how those character action figures pair or don't pair and what roles they can play in your story? Or do you want us talking about character traits and how those character traits might have words, body language, cadence, or pacing associated with them? So tell us in the Dialogue Doctor Slack. If you're not in the Dialogue Doctor Slack, you should go to patreon.com/Jeff Elkins and sign up for $1 a month. And then you can come and join the conversation about all these things. And the Dialogue Doctor Slack is probably rolling their eyes because I already asked them a survey earlier this week that now I'm completely throwing out with this new question.
No, that's not true either, because a lot of the feedback that they gave you informed where we are.
It did inform where we are. Even though I left it out of my weird wall of yarn, it actually was one of the strings of yarn.
I think I cut you off in your ball of yarn because it was not going at 2 speed.
It actually, yeah, it fits between the pointillism and me walking around at holiday events is the survey and thinking through the different archetypes that I ask people to weigh in on and how those archetypes might work. That's where I got to the buckets. Yeah, so it fits in there. So
yeah,
I just want to let everybody know I didn't actually just disregard feedback. It was actually very helpful to send me down this rabbit trail of spiraledom. This is what happens when I get vacation and I like have time.
I know. Meanwhile, I've been on vacation and I have done almost nothing but binge terrible television and some good television too.
I wrote 38,000 words last week during my vacation.
Wow.
I wrote almost a whole book.
I watched.
I threw a bunch of them away.
Television. I don't even know if that's possible in a week, but it felt like it. That's amazing. That is a lot of writing.
It's a lot of writing. I mean, it's just you give me free time, and I'm going to do stuff with it because I am incredibly anxious and need to fill my hands with things, or I just sit around and contemplate the end of the world. So, let's write some words, man. It's crazy how anxiety will fuel speed in writing. It's trying to use those disadvantages as a superpower. Anyway, okay, second question we're talking about today, so people can weigh into that at the Slack. I thought it would be, you and I typically have very different planning styles. We actually haven't talked about our answers to this.
Yeah.
It is the new year.
This year. We haven't talked about it this year. We've talked about it. We talked about it in the past.
We've talked about it a lot. Have we talked about New Year's resolutions before?
Yeah, I think we did at not necessarily resolutions. We talked about like goals for the year at the beginning of last year.
Did we? I don't remember.
I don't know if it was for a podcast or just for our regular
job. Just our regular banter.
We see each other so much.
It's true.
On Zoom. Never in person anymore.
Never in person. No, especially not right now as I'm awaiting COVID tests. So see aforementioned large group events earlier. So I am vaccinated, everybody. So I have,
and your whole family was masked.
And my whole family was masked. Yeah, but Omicron is a crafty little bitch. So yeah. So anyway, I'm just going to keep talking or I'm going to start to worry. So we're talking about New Year's resolutions. And not as just, and the reason I wanted to talk about this is because this is the time that we talk about goal setting. This is not actually a New Year's thing for me. This is a lifestyle. So I was like, yeah, it is.
Lifestyle for humanity. And I don't know. I was trying to use your buzzwords from earlier today.
You can't use them. You need 15 years of preaching experience to throw pointless theological and philosophical concepts into everyday conversation.
That's true.
It's like that one time in that one chapter. I'm just kidding. So let's talk about goal setting and how we both go about it. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I feel like you need to go first in goal setting because I don't really goal set, which
that's
is
what I think is beautiful.
Actually, do
do, but I think
I do it very differently than most people. Like I have objectives. So for the community who hasn't really realized this about Jeff and I yet, Jeff is all about the journey, and I just want to get to the destination. Right? Like for me, it's all about winning. If I can't win, I don't want to play.
It's really funny.
That was all about like growth and learning and understanding and having a better, clearer understanding of. I don't care about any of that. I just want to get.
Just want to win. Yeah, just want to win. So I will talk about mine first because I kind of do what normal people do on steroids, and then you can talk about yours. So what I do at the
So
beginning,
just so we're all clear, Jeff just clearly said that I was not normal.
no, I think I would use the phrase beautifully unique. No, I
Oh,
actually, the reason so I'm going to be honest, the reason I wanted to talk about this with you is because I feel like whenever we talk about it, I learn a ton from you about like ways that I need to improve my own processes, because I get a little stuck in my own planning.
mm.
And yeah, so that's one of the reasons I want to talk about it, because I think there's a beauty to your intentional flexibility.
Well, that's really funny, because whenever we talk about this, I always feel like, oh my gosh, I learned so much about like discipline and planning, because
To stress people out.
I am like a tornado.
Yeah. So for me, again, New Year is actually just an excuse, but this is something I do year round. So it's not something I just do at the new year. I do it all year. And then I actually re-examine every 3 months. So what I do is I set my objectives for the year. I'm like, what do I want to accomplish this year? And I think about it from multiple spheres. So I think about my personal health and my personal life. I think about my intellectual health, like what are some things I want to examine and I want to chase. Typically, that's not about topics. That's not about like, oh, I'm going to learn about pointillism, because I like to grab topics as they come, but it's about disciplines that are going to open me up to that stuff. So like, do I need to be listening to podcasts like I'm listening to podcasts? Do I need to be consuming shows like I'm consuming shows? Right now I read in the evening. Should I still be reading in the evening? Right now I read like 50% nonfiction, 50% fiction. Is that a good balance? Right now I have a rule that if I don't like a book, I don't have to finish it. Is that an appropriate rule? So the intellectual thinking is more about like, okay, what kind of practices am I going to have? I also set writing goals. What do I want to write? And then I set business goals. And I'm like, what are my goals for businesses, for finances, and what is it going to take to achieve those goals? So this all comes from, for me, this all comes from an obsession I had in college with monastic life. Specifically, for those of you who are monastic nerds like I am, the Benedictine rule of life. So in college, I started developing every 6 months a rule of life, which is like, these are the disciplines I'm going to live by. And then you examine if those disciplines are working on a routine schedule. And if they're not working, you amend them or throw them away. And if they are working, you keep them or increase them. So I used to do that all the time. And my productive / health life now kind of stems from that Benedictine rule of life obsession. So for example, this year I was like, well, to meet my financial goals and my personal creative goals, I really need to write 4 books. In 2021, I wrote 0 books, mostly because I was figuring out the dialogue doctor stuff. My goal was 2. I wrote 0. And because I started a book and it did not go well emotionally. So I just walked away from it for a while. But I'm back kind of on, and COVID, really screwed with me. So again, anxiety, and pandemic aren't great bedfellows. So I'm more back to myself now. So I'm re-examining like what went wrong, where did I fail to meet these goals, what habits did I drop that stopped. And anyway, I realized like, okay, if I pick these habits back up, if I get back to channeling my anxiety into writing instead of wandering around my house and eating Oreos, what can I actually accomplish? And so I'm gonna write 4 books this year is my goal. So what I do is I put each book on the calendar. They're like, here's when I want to publish the book. And then I work backwards from that. And I say like, okay, if I want to publish my next novel in mid-May, at what point do I have to get it to a proofreader? Because the proofreader is going to be the last step for me. So I reached out to the proofreader I'm going to use, and she was like, if you get it to me by mid-March, I can have it back to you by late April, and that will allow you to make the changes and the edits to get it at a publishable place. And then I was like, okay, so if the proofreader gets it, then do other editors need to get it? And I talked to Laura, and I also have Chris Kane reading it for a 3-story method diagnostic for me, because I'm doing them. So I figured I should have someone do one on my work too. And they were both like, January, February. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to finish this book by, early February at the absolute latest, how much do I need to write a day? And is that even feasible? So I schedule out if I do 5 chapters a week, which is I write a chapter a night when I'm on my game. So 5 chapters a week is doable. If I do 5 chapters a week, I can finish that first book and publish it by May. And then after that, I was like, so what is the second book and how many words is that? And what is that? And I was like, okay, well, if I pass this one off to editors in February, then I can start writing my second book in February. And that because it's a lot shorter book and Laura and I are working on it together, that one can also come out in the spring. So I set like a publishing date for that. And then I was like, okay, I want to write a second novel. I've had this I don't know, this dark romance, dark comedy romance in my head that I really want to get out of my head. I also have to write the next book the final book in my Moneta Watkins and Howe series. And so I was like, well, the Watkins and Howe one should come first because I'm starting to get letters from readers that are angry about when is that coming? It's been a year.
Which you have to say is pretty amazing.
Oh, it's awesome.
Your readers want to read your book so bad that they're sending you letters.
It's awesome.
Like, you've arrived.
Yeah, it's nice. I just need like 2,000 more of those readers, and then I'll actually be like at a place where that's sustainable. But for the 5 of you, I love you. So I was like, I should finish that one first. So if I want to put that one on in September, what is writing? So I do that with each book, and that's how I build it. I do the same thing with the Dialogue Doctor. I was like, how many sessions can I manage a month? How many editing clients can I manage a month? How many book coaching clients can I manage a month? When do I need to take those? We've got 4 master classes scheduled. I know what those do to my schedule, like what those do to my pacing. So anyway, all that to say, I put together huge spreadsheets. And then at the end of every week, I track my progress and I see how I'm going. And at the end of every month, I take an hour and I look at my progress and all of my goals and objectives. I see how they're progressing and I adjust those goals and objectives accordingly, which is why in 2021, it wasn't a surprise to me that I didn't publish any books, because I knew by March that, books weren't happening in 2021. So that's my system. It is time intensive and a little neurotic, but it makes me feel like a monastic, and that still makes me a little happy. So I'm keeping it. And it's very rigid and very systematized. So that's my system. Laura, what's your system?
So I have to say, like, every time I hear you talk about goal setting and objectives and like outlining processes, I'm always all inspired, because that is not how I work at all. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's so much better ways out there of getting stuff done than the way I get stuff done.
And so I just want to speak to that for a second, because I'm not sharing my process so somebody could be like, ooh, I'm going to do that. The reason I wanted us to talk about this is because we're so different. I tell people all the time, especially when I used to do more life coaching, the goal is not to not to adopt someone else's process, but to figure out what works for you by playing with what works for other people. Mm-hmm. So, I don't want anybody to listen to the nonsense I just spilled out and be like, oh my gosh, I'm opening a Google Sheet right now. I do want you to be able to go, hey, here's what works for me. I want to try this little aspect of it to push myself a little bit further this year than last year. Yeah. So anyway, all that to say, there is no right answer. To quote The Matrix, which we were referencing earlier, there is no spoon.
Which they did not say in the movie. I don't think. I don't
Oh,
know.
that, no,
I
I'm
might
not
have
seeing it at all.
I might have
That's
fallen
what a
asleep. There
missed
was a lot of
opportunity.
pill, whether it was the blue pill or the red pill. So there was a lot of talk about
That's my
that.
least favorite part of that
I'm
movie.
sorry.
It's okay. All right, go for it. What's your
So
system?
so system is a loose term for me. So I am at my core an extremely lazy procrastinator. Every time I say this to people, they make that face
So,
because
but I know you, and that is a
so
negative description,
but
which I would phrase positively as your strength is in the moment and you work best in emergency circumstances.
absolutely right. Like so I I have a friend who Jill, gosh, 10, 12 years ago, I don't even know how long it's been now, asked me if I would be a bridesmaid in her wedding. And I was so honored to be asked. And I told her, yes, but you have to understand, I do not do bridesmaid stuff. I don't want to go dress shopping. I don't want to pick out flowers. I don't want to do ladies' tea. Now, I did a lot of those things. I was like, but the week of the wedding, you have me in full force, which means I will do your programs and I will make sure that your caterer is where your caterer is supposed to be. And anybody who tries to get near you who is not supposed to be near you, I will be your lineman, right? Like I will keep you focused on your day and I will handle any problems that come up, right? Like because like you said, like if I have a deadline, if I have somebody else's goal, I can make anything happen. Not, I mean, within reason, right? Like, but when it's for myself, eh, there isn't that sense of urgency that so like for you when you're making your plans there's sort of a sense of urgency for completing things because you have goals to achieve where you want to be. Like you're climbing a mountain and you know that in order to reach the top of that mountain you have to go this many hours, this many days. I look at a mountain that somebody else says, hey, we're going to take that mountain. I'm like, I'm in. Okay, we need 17 hours to get to the top of that summit. We probably should do that over the course of 3 months, but I know it takes 17 hours, so I'm going to plan for 20 and I'm going to get you there 15 minutes before. Right? I'm also really good as a visionary, right? Like somebody says, I have a goal and I can help them lay out and plan for the things that they want to do, right? Like you need to do this and you need to do this and you need to do this. I, however, am not a middle game pitcher. I'm a starter and I'm a closer, but you do not want me from the second inning through the eighth because I get bored and I get distracted and there's television and there's cake and there's this thing or that. Like I'm not good at the middle game.
Yeah, I think of it as like an Avengers style. Like you're like Captain America. When the aliens are coming through the portal, you really want Captain America on the ground doing the thing, right? Stopping the aliens from coming through the portal to destroy New York. I'm more like Nick Fury. When nothing is happening, I will be building spaceships that can like live in the sky. But when the aliens are coming through the portal, if the spaceships can't handle it, I don't know how much help I'm actually getting.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, planning and goal setting tends to be much more like loosely objective based. So for example, for Dialogue Doctor, I have been working with 2 clients with coaching sessions for several months, Faye and Amy, and they are amazing and they're enthusiastic and their stories are so great. And I'm honored every week that they want me to read their work and tell them my thoughts and help them kind of find their art, right? Like it's amazing. And I was thinking that, hey, it would be nice to take on a couple more clients. So I talked to you and I was like, okay, so in January, I'm going to put in the Slack channel a couple of free sessions the way Jeff did a couple months ago, just to kind of get myself out there more, do a couple recordings, give Jeff some recordings. And that's the extent of my planning, right? Like I'll look at my calendar. I will figure out when I can do sessions. I'll put them up and I'll do them. And if I get more clients from it, great. If not, I've done a couple of sessions that people can see what type of editor I am. And if they like that, great. And if they don't, right? Like, so it's not, I don't have a concrete goal of I need to take on 6 more clients a month, for which I know is like your style, right? Like you're like, I need to do this. I have to check, I have to accomplish this.
Yep.
For me, it's more like, I need to get healthy. So I need to work out twice a week because I work out 0 now for the last, however long. So like, okay, twice a week is something doable, but I don't say twice a week for 60 minutes. And like, I can't, when there's that much structure, I get paralyzed. So it seems like you take comfort in having structure. For me, I see structure and I'm like, no, back away.
Yeah, and I do want to say though, you're not just off the cuff. Part of what I love, and I don't know what system you're using now, but when you had an office before the glorious pandemic, when you had an office, I used to love watching you. You would like have a project or a due date or something, so you'd write it on a post-it note and you'd stick it where you can see it, and that was your version of like a spreadsheet. And
Yeah.
so you were reminded every day. You're like, oh yeah, I got to finish that thing. And then when it's done, you throw the post-it note away, which is, there's a part of what I love about the system is there's a beautiful flexibility to it of like crisis management, because in a crisis, again, like in 2021, my writing systems completely fell apart. And so like, I couldn't really, it took me a long time to get back on the horse to be like, okay, I need to start writing daily again. I need to start like getting back into my routines. I need to start, and the only way that I got back into it is I actually forced JP Rindfleisch to write a velo with me. And the act of having someone else dependent on like someone else that was expecting things from me is part of what moved me back into writing fiction. Like I needed a partner to be like, hey, we have a time schedule here and we need to get our crap together. So like we all have ways of manipulating our system, but part of me is like, man, if I was more flexible, I might have been able to recover faster and set smaller bite-sized goals as opposed to my like need to have some grand vision to accomplish something. So I think there's pros and cons of both styles that we have.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that because for me, having somebody else depend on something or need something is a huge motivator for me, because if it's just for me, I can move the goal line a million times and I can justify it. Like if you ever need an excuse for why you didn't get something done, I have a million of them just stored up as to why I did not do something, right? But that's for me. But if somebody else needs something or depends on something, I'm going to prioritize that. I chalk that up to being a middle child, but I think it's more just me. But yeah, like if somebody needs something, and that actually has really helped me a lot in kind of getting over the source of the trauma of the pandemic, going all the way back to 2020, right? Like knowing that other people at work, my spouse, other people in my master's program, like not that they were relying on me specifically, but I knew that if I wasn't getting the stuff done that I needed to get done, it reflected poorly on my advisor who, helped me get into the program, championed me to be in the program. And, because as a master's level advisor, like you need your students to succeed. So if I wasn't succeeding, it wasn't a reflection on me because I can point to 50 other things that I was doing that were higher priority in that moment, but it was reflecting badly on her. So for me, I find that having other people to hold me accountable really helps me kind of get motivated and get in gear. So
Yeah, and I think it's you know, for me, like for me, conversations around the system and motivations behind the system are a little bit different. Um, because those are two different questions. Like how you go about managing your work is one question, and then what motivates you to manage that work is another question. Because I'm actually not motivated by accomplishing goals. I
mm-hmm,
know it sounds weird because I have all these goals, but that's actually
mm-hmm,
not what motivates me to do anything. I don't like, I can write meaningless goals on paper all day and I will do none of them. Um, what motivates me to accomplish goals is um, the future of others. So
mm-hmm,
like I realize that like, specifically with writing, it's about my kids. It's like
mm-hmm,
I've got one kid in college and my writing paid for his tuition this year. I've got another kid who's looking at colleges and going in a year and a half. And so
mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, I need to up my income to pay for that kid. So that's my motivating factor, is like,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily about like, I like accomplishing goals. I know people like that. I know people who are like,
Mm-hmm,
oh, I feel really good when I check things off of a box. But for me, the motivation actually comes from like what it accomplishes as opposed
mm-hmm,
to the act of checking things off. And again, there's no right answer. It's all about like
mm-hmm.
understanding. It's really about understanding yourself and knowing how to manipulate yourself. Because
Yeah.
something I've watched you do over our like 12, 13, 15 years of friendship, however long we've been friends,
18,
18 years.
20,
Yeah.
90, I don't know.
Something I find really comical that you'll do sometimes, comical in like a great way, is
Uh-huh.
you'll something will need to get done. And so you will change the story around that thing to
Oh
be
yeah.
about it has to help somebody. And all of a sudden you're like super
Oh yeah.
motivated to do it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So and this is what I'm talking about, and I chalk it up to being a middle child, but I have no idea where it comes from. I will not do something for myself. Like I will not call to make a doctor's appointment. I will not call anybody for any reason. Somebody else needs somebody to be spoken to about something. I'm on my phone almost immediately, right? Usually I check the internet first. And if I can't get through the internet, I will make a call,
Yeah.
right? But you're absolutely right. Like I do. I mean, the master's program, for example, right? Like I had during the pandemic, I had zero desire to like add that on to full-time work, this dialogue doctor, pandemic, like all of it. And on top of it, a master's program. But the minute I, like you said, changed the narrative, and it's no longer about me and a reflection on me. It's about what the reflection on the company and the reflection on my advisor. Now all of a sudden I have this motivation to get something done, right? I've always been like that. It's just that need for, it's why I am an amazing bridesmaid the 4 days before
The
the
4 days
wedding,
before the
but
wedding.
I am terrible in the 6 months going up to
That's really
it.
funny.
I
Yeah.
don't want to hear about your dress. I don't, well, I'll talk about your cake because it's cake.
Well, I
But
mean, who doesn't want to talk about cake? Um, yeah. All right. So I think we did it. So I think leaving this conversation, the two questions I would encourage writers to ask themselves is, what system this year are you going to use to mm, get work done? And then what is motivating the accomplishment of that system? Is it more fly by the seat of your pants, take challenges as they come system where you're just throwing post-it notes on a wall? Do you need obsessive spreadsheets like I do, where you're planning everything out in great detail and then routinely failing those systems and motivating yourself to redo them?
hey, the post-it note system is not foolproof either.
It is not.
Okay.
I've also seen you just like take post-it notes off the wall and put them in a drawer. And I'll be like, where's that going? You're like, that one, we're not going to talk about that one.
Or sometimes the post-it notes are so thick, it's like a whole post-it pad and we have no
Yeah,
idea what's actually there. Sometimes they're there so long that they kind of lose their stick and
that's
fall
right.
off behind the
And you
desk.
forget what they mean. I'll be like, what does that one mean? You'll be like, I don't know.
I don't know, but
So-
it'll come to me. It'll come to me.
Just got to look at it long enough. Anyway, all that to say, what's the system and what's motivating you to do it is the question. This is the questions for this week. All right, that's all I had today. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, that was fun. Happy end of 2021 and yay start for 2022.
Thank God we got through 2021. I didn't think we were going to get through it there for a little while.
But we've been doing this for like a year and a half now.
I know. There's a lot of times this year where I was walking around, I was like, there's not going to be a 2022. It's like, this is it. This is all we get.
You know what I find so funny is that you and I are so like polar opposites. There are very few things like
what makes us work.
ideologically, I think we're very similarly aligned, but all of our habits, all of our goals, all like we're so like whenever there's a spectrum of thing, I'm one anchor and you're the other anchor.
That's right.
I just love that about
opposite ends.
I always learn so much from you.
Oh, so. Thanks. Same. All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording because I have to say that every podcast still. We're a year and a half now. I'm still saying it. Yeah.